Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 2nd of June, 2023. All right, everyone, let's get into it. So there's been a lot of talk lately about encouraging more people to stake at home or solo stake, and I figured yesterday I was on Twitter and I was thinking to myself, and this was actually pretty late my time. It was 1:45 a.m. technically today, I guess, and I kind of put this tweet out with a bunch of resources around Ethereum solo and home staking. Now, the way I kind of look at solo and home staking is that there is obviously doing it all yourself, right? Getting the 32 ETH, spinning up your validator, following the guides to do that. And I link the guides in the tweet here. But then you can go ahead and stake with Rocket Pool. In the future, you'll be able to stake with a bunch of other services. You can use things like Dapnode or Avado in order to stake on your own as well. So basically, doing this kind of stuff and solo staking is definitely still very technically, I guess, hard or difficult. It is not something for the faint of heart, but it's getting easier all the time. And it's not something that I think that people should look at as impossible or look at as something that's scary. Look at it as a project, look at it as a learning experience. And there's plenty of guides out there and plenty of communities that are willing to help you. And at the top, I actually linked the two probably the most helpful communities in Ethereum when it comes to solo and home staking, both ETH Staker and the Rocket Pool community. And the fun thing about the ETH Staker community is that they'll give you general staking help across anything. Basically, it doesn't matter if it's solo staking or Rocket Pool, and they'll even discuss with you, staking with different service providers and centralized exchanges. And then you have the Rocket Pool community, which also does that general chat, but obviously will be able to help you with Rocket Pool specific things, probably more than the ETH Staker community would. But both of these together, I mean, you'll probably get any question you have around Ethereum staking answered by one of, or if not both of these communities. That's how good these communities are. And I have personal experience here. I've been a kind of part of these communities for a while now, and they are staking experts, and not just for solo and home staking, but just staking in general on Ethereum. And then you have a bunch of other things here, as I mentioned, some are ESAT staking guides, as well as CoinCashew staking guides, both excellent. I've used both of them myself a variety of times, and I love them. Remy Roy's ETH Wizard software that I've mentioned on the Refuel a bunch of times before. I haven't used that yet, but I've heard very, very good things about that, and it makes solo staking easier. The Ethereum.org staking page is also a great resource, and as I mentioned, Dapnode and Avado as well. And I probably missed things as well, and people replied to my tweet with things that I missed that you can go check out for yourself. But yeah, I'll just link this tweet in the YouTube description below for any prospective solo or home stakers out there that are interested in this. You can go check it out. As I said, in the YouTube description, it'll be linked. All right, so we get an update from Stakewise. So they said, is now a good time to discuss products that help decentralize Ethereum? Certainly feels so. So here's a short update on the status of Stakewise V3 development and more from the development team. TLDR, the Stakewise is entering the final stretch. So they had 5 key updates here. So basically, the rotation of withdrawal credentials for the pool validators has been completed. The Horcrux is no more, and the docs will be updated accordingly. The smart contracts for Stakewise V3 have been completed and are being tested. The remaining smart contract work is related to the custom vault functionality requested by some of Stakewise's partners and the migration of V2 to V3. Front end and back end work is ongoing for the rollout of the public testnet as soon as possible. Nodewise software has been further tested and refined, and a liquidity program and ambassador program drafts have been prepared and are being discussed internally before public release. So I think Stakewise V3 is definitely going to be one of those big releases that really starts to or continues, I guess, like the really great work that other providers like Rocket Pool have done in decentralizing stake out on Ethereum for players that don't have that 32 ETH, right? Because that, as I mentioned before, that capital requirement to me is that biggest barrier to entry there. And it's great to see that Stakewise's V3 public testnet is going live soon, and that they already have a liquidity and ambassador program that has been in the works, and I'm assuming will go live around the same time that V3 vaults go live on mainnet, if not shortly after. And this is the action that I was talking about yesterday when I went over my tweet about how the social layer itself is not enough. We need action, and there is a lot of action happening. I think that not only do I think that people took my tweet a little bit the wrong way. They took it to mean that I thought the social layer didn't matter, which is not what I was saying, of course. But I think they also took it to to mean that I didn't think that any action was being done, but that's not true. There's plenty of stuff being done. I think I just wanted to make sure that we do as much as possible, and we continue to hit on that, and we continue to hit on it from every single different direction. And one other thing that I didn't mention yesterday about that generally is that I understand why people don't like it when you say certain things out loud that everyone's kind of thinking, but you put it to the back of your mind because it doesn't feel good to think about it. When it comes to someone telling you, or me telling people that the social layer isn't enough, we need to be doing more. It's all, it's fine to go ahead and say that such and such is bad, or such and such should basically change, or we want this to get better. But I think the reason why people get so upset about it is because they feel powerless. And obviously, this doesn't just apply to crypto. Anytime you feel powerless in your life, you're going to get upset about it when someone tells you that you actually should feel powerless because of such and such reason. But the thing is that while individuals are often powerless, and not just within crypto, but in real life, a collective has a lot of power, and a collective that forms around the same shared beliefs and values has so much power, has more power than pretty much anything else that I can think of when it comes to human coordination. Now, we've seen this play out time and time again within crypto, specifically, obviously, when we see things like just Ethereum generally keep succeeding, keep executing on its roadmap. That is human coordination going right. That is the core developers and researchers and community members and other stakeholders all coordinating together, or building together to make this great product, right? To make this great network that we know as Ethereum. Same is true for coordinating around decentralizing Ethereum staking, right? And there's been a lot of community work here done, obviously, from Rocket Pool, from the ETHStaker community, as I mentioned before, and a bunch of other satellite communities around that. Now, what needs to be done, I think, going forward is that these communities really need to start pushing on certain things and start coordinating better in order to take down, or maybe not take down, but like take market share away from the more centralized players, which, as I said, I think is happening, but I think we could be doing more here. So it's great to see that Stakewise already has a liquidity program and ambassador program in the works here, because that's exactly what is needed. Now, speaking of that, I also wanted to mention something that Rocket Pool has been doing lately that Jasper shared here. So he basically shared, or basically started off this tweet by saying, who will decentralize Ethereum? It will be whales, DAOs, institutions, etc. And Jasper has called on the Aragon project to stake their $100 million treasury beyond just Lido. The risk-adjusted return is highest when diversified with Rocket Pool, RETH, and better for Ethereum. Now, there is a forum post here from Aragon basically stating that they want to stake their ETH. I think the original proposal was to stake it all with Lido, but I think they're open to staking, some with Rocket Pool, or I guess like doing a 75-25 split, I think I read, where 75% would go with Lido, 25% would go with Rocket Pool, and then rebalancing that over time. I think there was an argument put forward that the reason that why they want to go with Lido is because Lido is the biggest user of the Aragon product, and I get that. You obviously want to support the users of your own product, but again, going with Lido at this stage, especially with such a large treasury, is risky. It is not just risky from a decentralization perspective or centralization perspective, but also risky from the fact that it's so big, and if something goes wrong, obviously there could be a bigger penalty there for that. But I'm glad to see that Aragon is open to doing that split there. Now, in saying that, this is the kind of stuff, again, is what I was talking about, where this is the action that I want to see. I want to see community members, team members, anyone just going out there, talking to the people, especially the whales and the DAOs and institutions, and saying to them, hey, come stake with this solution, or come stake with our solution over Lido or over Coinbase or Binance or any of the big existing solutions for such and such reason. Because obviously when the treasuries are this big, you can't just say to them, oh, you need to stake with this solution because Lido has too much market share. I don't think that's going to be enough to convince people to stake with whatever other service over Lido, right? Or over a dominant service. So you need to basically lay out the arguments for them and lay it out in a post, which is exactly what Jasper's done here. You can see his screenshot of what he did. He laid it out. He's got a nice table here showing showing what's going on, and can kind of convince the Aragon community in this case to stake with, or stake at least a portion with Rocket Pool and not go just all in on Lido. So I want to see obviously more of this happening across the ecosystem, and I think that people understand this. I think that there's more and more work being done all the time, and it just goes to show that the community is ready to do these sorts of stuff. They're ready to reach out. It just requires the action to do it. And the funny thing is, I actually just saw a tweet before that I haven't got here, that Celsius has actually begun restaking the ETH that they withdrew, and they're not restaking most of it, I believe, with Lido. So it seems that they've staked a lot of it as part of their own staking pool, and they've gone with Figment as well. So that's a lot of ETH that has actually been reshuffled. I did talk about the great reshuffling a lot, obviously leading up to withdrawals, and some people have said that it didn't play out, but it is playing out. It's just that it's going to take a longer time to play out, as I've talked about relentlessly at this point. But just the fact that obviously just the fact that Celsius withdrew a large portion of ETH from Lido, which wasn't staked yet, mind you, but it was going to be staked with Lido. It was in the buffer, right? There was 400 and something thousand ETH in the buffer that was going to be staked with Lido, which would have obviously increased Lido's market share significantly, has actually been reshuffled out and gone elsewhere now, which is extremely positive, right? I love that that's happened, and that's not the only reshuffle that we've seen happening. And the reshuffling didn't just have to come from, I think, people withdrawing from other services and going to, withdrawing from like Lido, Kraken, or Coinbase and going somewhere else. It can also happen from people that weren't staking to begin with, just not staking with a dominant service and going somewhere else. And I know that might be stretching the definition of a reshuffling, and probably it is, right? But that's how I viewed it too. So it's good to keep in mind, as I said, it's a longer term thing. It is playing out. I do think that we can take market share away from the dominant players, especially with all these other solutions going online. I think Stakewise V3 is going to be very big. I'm going to be doing my best there. I'm going to be setting up my own vault and screaming from the rooftops for people to come stake with me or stake with my vault. And I'm also not going to be taking any money from it. If I do charge a fee on it, it's going to public goods funding. It's going probably to the Protocol Guild, right? And I'm doing that because I don't want to be seen as shilling this staking pool just so I can earn money from it. No, I'm doing it so that people stake with my vault or another V3 vault, for example, instead of going with a dominant provider. So that's kind of the action that I'm trying to take, or at least one of the actions that I'm trying to take there. But anyway, you can go read the post on Aragon's forum for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, one last Rocket Pool update here is that Rocket Pool announced that they are coming to zkSync Era. You'll soon be able to liquid stake your ETH on zkSync Era by simply holding RETH in your wallet. Just like on mainnet and other L2s, RETH will continue to accrue staking rewards automatically. So very cool to see that Rocket Pool is now supported by zkSync Era here. The Era network has been growing quite nicely, and it has a bunch of integrations across the crypto ecosystem right now, and it's obviously zkSync's main product, and obviously it's a layer 2, so the costs are lower. So this is the kind of stuff that we want to see happening as well, because it just opens up Rocket Pool staking to more and more participants. And yes, they're not becoming node operators themselves, but demand for RETH leads to demand for node operators leads to demand for people to spin up node operators, which increases Rocket Pool's market share, and then it just is a very nice feedback loop from there. So great to see that Rocket Pool is coming to zkSync Era here. You can check out this little thread and blog post, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. All right, so Swell Network has announced that they are now offering 0% fees, which means you get to keep all of your staking rewards if you stake with Swell. Now, this is something that I've been talking about for a little while. I've been talking about ways that different staking providers can actually take market share away from the bigger providers. One of those ways is dropping their fees to zero. Now, this is obviously not going to be a permanent thing, but by dropping their fees to zero, it definitely encourages a lot of people to one, reshuffle out of certain solutions and go with Swell, and two, encourage people to go with Swell to begin with and not go with other solutions. And the really cool thing about this is that someone could actually sell their ST-ETH right now, right? And then basically and then stake that ETH with Swell and immediately get access to those 0% fees. Now, obviously, There is a deposit queue right now with with Ethereum staking. Depending on how you stake with Swell and other providers, you may not be earning rewards straight away here, but those 0% fees are definitely very enticing. And I believe Swell is also teasing its token right now too, which is obviously getting more people to stake with them because they want to farm the token. So that's an incentive there. I think they have over 30 million TVL, and they didn't launch that long ago. So just yeah, absolutely amazing to see that they're growing, and great to see that they're actually offering these 0% fees now. So if you're interested in checking them out, you can go to app.swellnetwork.io. Do keep in mind that Swell is very new, right? There is increased smart contract risk because of that. So just be comfortable with, just be aware of that, and make sure you're comfortable with that before staking with them. This goes back to what I was saying when I first started talking about Rocket Pool. I actually waited quite a while before I started promoting Rocket Pool because of not just the smart contract risk, but other risks surrounding it. And I didn't want to funnel people into something that I believed was not up to the standard that up to my standard essentially. And not to say that Swell can't get there, but as I said, it is right now very I guess new, which means increased smart contract risk and stuff like that. Not to say that you're going to lose any money or that there's going to be a bug or anything like that, but you always need to look at this sorts of stuff when it's a new contract and evaluate the risk associated with that. And I should also disclose that I am an investor in Swell as well here, but again, I'm not shilling them just because I'm an investor. I am covering them because, as I've said plenty of times on the Refuel, I want to encourage people to stake with these other providers, and I want to send kudos to the providers that are actually doing these growth tactics, such as lowering their fees to 0% for a limited time. Obviously, it's not going to last forever, but for a limited time, and also doing other things like liquidity incentives, because that's what's needed. The economic incentives is what's needed to take market share away from the bigger players and to prevent more stake going into the bigger players' pockets. So yeah, you can go check this out. We'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so ETHStaker has published a execution client diversity blog post, and they started off this tweet by saying, "Call to action, node operators should diversify their execution clients away from a majority Geth setup. In the current supermajority execution client environment, there's a significant monetary risk for operators running only Geth." So you can read about this here in this blog post, and this is something that I've talked about a lot recently, so I'm not going to talk about it again because I'm going to be rehashing a lot of points. But the key point here is that the recommended execution clients to use other than Geth are Nethermind and Besu. And that's what I've been suggesting for a while now. I haven't suggested Aragon or RETH or Nimbus-ETH1. In the terms of Reth and Nimbus-ETH1 here, they're very new, like extremely new and still in development. I don't even know if you could run them on mainnet right now in any kind of like good capacity. And obviously you don't want to be running it as part of a staking setup. And Aragon, they are a bit volatile as a client, I believe. So if you're looking for something that is relatively stable compared to Geth, is a great client, is getting better all the time, well, Nethermind and Besu are definitely the best alternatives to Geth. And I've been preaching this for a long time now. So anyway, if you're interested in changing your client from Geth to something else, recommend Nethermind and Besu. Also recommend reading this blog post. It is great. I read it, and everything that I was reading on here, I was like, wow, they actually hit on all the important points. They explained why it's a risk for there to be a supermajority client. They explained kind of like how bugs can form here, why client diversity is important, all that good stuff there. So yeah, kudos to the ETHStaker community, and in particular the authors on your screen here for the work that they've done. You should definitely go check this out. I'll link the blog post in the YouTube description below. All right, the fourth cohort of the Ethereum Protocol Fellowship is now here. If you're interested in Ethereum core development and want to become ready to be a contributor, don't miss the application process. So yeah, the applications are now open for the fourth cohort, which you can submit your application here at this link, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. Doing it, making sure to do it before June 16th. Now, I've talked about the Protocol Fellowship since it began, basically, and how it's been seemingly an amazing success to get more and more core devs and researchers involved in the core protocol development of Ethereum. As I said, you can apply here in the blog post, and there's more details in the blog post here. But yeah, if you're someone who is at all interested in helping the Ethereum protocol continue to to get better and better and helping Ethereum continue to execute on that core protocol roadmap, then there is no better way to get started in core protocol development and research than with the protocol fellowship, which is obviously run by the Ethereum Foundation here. You're going to be able to get in contact and get mentorship from existing core developers and researchers. You're going to be able to basically be at the metal of the core protocol, basically the bare metal, and work on that, all that sorts of stuff. And I honestly couldn't think of anything cooler to work on if I was a developer than this. So yeah, I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But as I said, applications are open now, but be sure to get them in before June 16th. All right, so Jesse Polak here has shared a tweet, and he started off by saying, "It's not zero knowledge or optimistic rollup, it's both. We just opened a request for product to build a ZK validity prover for the OP stack and thereby for Base, and have already met with multiple teams who are heads down making it happen." So I remember saying this quite a while ago now, and I've said it a bunch of times on the Refuel since I first said it, obviously, but I remember saying that there is no reason at all why optimistic rollups can't become validity rollups or can't use a ZK validity prover instead of fraud proofs as part of their stack. And it was never zero knowledge or optimistic rollup. It was both. It was whatever was best for the needs of that project. And it has always been like this since the earliest rollup days when this debate began, and I think that things like this happening just prove that that's playing out as I guess like I spoke about and a lot of other people spoke about, which is just really, really great to see. So as Jesse says here, they've already met with multiple teams that are building this out and want to make it happen. This would be huge because it would mean that anything building with OP stack could just plug into a ZK validity prover instead of doing fraud proofs. And basically become I guess, ZK rollup or a validity rollup here. Now, it does depend on the implementation. Obviously, different implementations will have different outcomes here. And right now, Optimism and the OP stack doesn't have a working fraud prover at all. I believe the only optimistic rollup that has that right now, well, I guess Fuel V1 probably has it, I think, from memory, but the only one with economic activity on it that has it is obviously Arbitrum 1. But they're all like, the thing is that if it turns out that fraud proving, like optimistic rollup fraud proving, is just strictly inferior to validity proofs and validity proving, then from not just the safety perspective or security perspective, but also a cost perspective, then I believe that optimistic rollups will just all convert into zero knowledge rollups or validity rollups, and any optimistic rollups that currently or that will continue to exist will be ones that are kind of needed to exist as an optimistic rollup or are happy existing as an optimistic rollup instead of a ZK or a validity rollup. Now, in saying that, it's going to be interesting to see what direction each project goes in. I'm actually super interested to see how Base ends up developing. Like, I know it's going to launch pretty muted from a tech perspective. It's going to be very centralized. It's probably not going to have a ZK prover or a validity prover up and running or anything like that. But I want to see how they progress. I want to see if they are able to remain at the forefront of rollup kind of innovation and progression, or if they become more of a follower where they essentially work alongside the Optimism team to obviously improve the OP stack, which then has downstream improvements for Base itself, rather than splintering off on their own and just improving Base without improving the rest of the ecosystem, which I don't think is actually going to be able to happen anyway, because they're building on OP stack, and that's the whole point. I mean that's the major reason why the OP stack is a thing, is so that there is a common standard that all the teams building on it can build together on, can innovate on, can improve on together. And then the longer term plan is for all these chains built using the OP stack to connect to something called a super chain. Now, the jury's still out on whether the super chain is going to be something that actually works, or something that people get value out of, or something that's that actually brings value to the ecosystem, but I think it's going to be a very cool experiment nonetheless. So anyway, you can go check out this request for product yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And one more thing about Optimism. So they announced today something called the OP stack mods. So basically what this is, and they said it in this tweet thread here, OP stack mods are a trend we have noticed emerging in response to the modularity of the OP stack. By spotlighting interesting mods, we want to help creative builders get feedback to improve their mods and inspire other builders to create their own mods and mods. And they say here, case in point, Celestia has built an OP stack mod that makes the data availability layer of the OP stack more modular, separating it from the ordering layer, which means that the OP stack can use other data availability layers like Celestia instead of just using Ethereum. And it doesn't have to be just Celestia. Obviously, it can be probably any data availability layer. But this is very cool. I mean, the OP stack is actually going like full, I guess, like executing fully on this modular framework, right? And basically becoming one of, if not the most modular frameworks for building crypto economic or crypto applications generally, which is just like very, very cool and very differentiated to what other ecosystems are doing. And as I've said before, each of these layer 2 projects are kind of carving out their own niche, and I'm very curious to see which ones actually succeed long term, which ones people actually resonate with, because it may turn out that the niches that they're carving are just not valuable to people, and people are happy with the existing infrastructure and happy with just things being EVM and happy with Solidity and all that, but we won't know until we try. So you can go give a read of this blog post around the OP stack mods. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so this was a timely announcement from Circle given all the recent debates around bridges in the rollup space. So Circle has announced that it is launching USDC natively on Arbitrum on June 8th. So why this is a big deal is because the USDC you're currently using on Arbitrum 1, for example, is bridged from Ethereum layer 1, right? So it's essentially issued on ETH layer 1, and then you're given, I guess, IOU on Arbitrum 1. Whereas when you are using natively issued USDC on Arbitrum 1, it is part of the Arbitrum 1 network, and then it can be bridged to Ethereum. So it's kind of like flips it. From my understanding, at least, it flips it so that the IOU is actually on Ethereum because it's been natively issued on Arbitrum 1 to begin with. Now, does this mean that it doesn't inherit, I guess, Ethereum's security properties or all the stuff that people have said in the past? It's nuanced, right? Because essentially what happens is that even though you have natively issued assets on the rollups themselves, they still need a settlement layer, a liquidity layer, a pass-through layer, like a bridging or interoperability layer in order to communicate with the outside world. And what better layer than Ethereum for that? So even though it's natively issued on Arbitrum 1, it's still going to be bridged through Ethereum to these other layer 2s and maybe to other layer 1s, and ultimately, obviously, the source of truth will be on Arbitrum 1, but then Arbitrum 1 is being powered by Ethereum. It's settling to Ethereum, so it all works together in kind of like a symbiotic relationship, a harmonistic relationship. But where the issue becomes, and this is where the bridge debate comes, is that what happens when there is, given that USDC is centralized, what happens when Circle says, well, okay, we're going to freeze the USDC associated with this address on Arbitrum 1, and then all the bridged USDC, then there is kind of like a gap, right? There's kind of like a hole there where there is some bridged IOU USDC somewhere that has been frozen on the kind of like Arbitrum 1 chain, and then there is kind of like a hole there. So it's interesting to see what would happen in that scenario, but that's when it comes to centralized assets. For decentralized assets, it basically falls back to, I would assume, the rollup itself, because the rollup itself would dictate what happens to that since it is natively issued on the rollup. So whether that be the governance of the rollup or if it's a centralized rollup, the controllers of that. So it becomes a bit murky from there. But very interesting debates going on right now, I think, in the ecosystem around that, around bridges, around rollups, stuff like that, around the potential for forking away from things. But I'm going to let those debates play out without weighing in too much on them. But you can go check out Circle's announcement for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so the Kakarot zkEVM, which I've talked about before on the Refuel, has announced today a pre-seed round with participation from Stakewise and Lambda class and from angels like Vitalik Buterin. So I don't think they've announced a dollar value here of what they raised, but I guess the congrats to them on the raise there. But what does the Kakarot zkEVM is obviously it's an EVM implemented in Cairo. So it leverages Stark proofs for provable transactions and blocks, ensuring transparency and security. And thanks to validity proofs, Kakarot can inherit security from Ethereum L1 while enabling a lower cost. So this isn't just your run-of-the-mill zkEVM. This is one that's being built based on Stakewise technology and being implemented in Cairo here, which is very exciting. And it's what they're calling a type 2.5 zkEVM. And what's funny about this is that I remember the Starkware ecosystem being a bit hesitant to promote or to build or to really get on board with the zkEVM train. But it seems they've changed their tune here, which is awesome because I think there are a bunch of great builders in the Starkware ecosystem. And for them to use their talents to build a zkEVM for Starkware implemented using Starkware's technology is definitely a big positive for the ecosystem. So as I said, congrats to them on the raise. I'm interested to see where this goes from here. All right, so this is just crazy. So I was looking at I guess like entry queue again for Ethereum staking today, and I mean, for those of you who don't know, it has just been up only since withdrawals, and right now it's freaking crazy. I have been watching this all night. It is at 88,000, the entry queue. I looked at this, an hour and 30 minutes ago. It was at 78,000. So there are big deposits going in right now. I haven't traced down exactly where these big deposits are coming from. I did mention earlier that Celsius is a big depositor right now. I believe I saw some going in from Kraken, funny enough. Maybe Gary Gensler is staking some of his ETH with Kraken. Oh, wait, no, sorry, he can't do that because Kraken can't offer staking to US persons. Anyway, enough of that joke. So this is crazy numbers here. But there was a tweet from Ultrasound Money today that said that 2.5 million ETH is queuing to secure Ethereum. That's $4.7 billion on top of $36 billion already staking. So that means that there is $40 billion that will be, that once the queue clears, there will be over $40 billion of ETH at stake. And I believe that's not even 20% of all Ethereum circulating. Of the circulating ETH supply. Now, just to put this in context and to show you how big of a deal this is, every other layer 1 token, or I guess like every other layer 1 associated token, market cap, whatever you want to call it, if you go down the list on CoinGecko, is smaller than 40 billion. The next biggest layer 1, and I'm not talking about Bitcoin, I'm talking about the smart contract layer 1s, right? Ethereum is at a $227 billion market cap with 40 billion of that staking. The next closest, some people will argue, is BNB at 50 billion, but I don't consider BNB to be a layer 1 token. BNB to me is like a pseudo equity for Binance. Yes, they have Binance Smart Chain, but that's just part of the Binance family. I think that BNB accrues most of its value because of Binance, not because of BSC. But if you want to include that, yes, it's still more than the current value of ETH staked, but not for long, right? But then you have XRP, which, I mean, it's XRP, right? But that's only at 27 billion. Then after that, you have Cardano. It's only at 13.2 billion. So, the amount of dollar value of ETH staked is almost 4 times as big as the entire market cap of Cardano, right? Of the next biggest kind of, I guess, smart contract competitor to Ethereum. And then you keep going down the list. You have Solana at 8.4 billion. So ETH the stake is already 4 times higher. And that's just the ETH at stake here. So just to give you context around just how big Ethereum is and just how much more valuable ETH is as an asset as compared to these other platforms out there. And that is not by accident, guys. That is not, that didn't happen overnight. That is years and years worth of kind of like tweaking ETH and memeing ETH into being this very valuable asset that I kind of ranted about yesterday a bit, and especially when it comes to things like the ETH BTC ratio and why that's been steady and going up during a bear market, and all those kind of under the surface reasons why I'm bullish on ETH, that all plays into it, and that is what's caused this just massive gap between Ethereum and its closest competitors. Just an absolutely massive gap, right, guys? So very cool to see that. And yeah, I mean, it just seems like people are going to keep staking ETH. At this rate, it seems like all ETH's going to be staked by in the next few years. But I don't think it'll get to that. Obviously, it will slow down, but it's blown me away. It honestly has blown away my expectations of how much ETH would be staked and how big the deposit queue would be. And we're almost at 100,000 validators waiting, which would put it at almost, I believe, 2 months of a queue, which is just absolutely insane to me that the queue's that big. But anyway, I digress on that point. I think that's the last of things to talk about for today. But just the one last shout out I wanted to give here is that I recorded a podcast episode with Eric Connor, my old podcast co-host on Into the Ether. We recorded that today, and it was an absolute banger, guys. I am not kidding when I say this was some of the most fun I've ever had on a podcast. It was so bullish. Eric and I, just got right back into the swing of things. We were bouncing off each other. It was so much fun for both of us, and I can't wait for you guys to listen to it. And that's going to be going live tomorrow. So tomorrow being Saturday, it'll be going live around the same time that I put the refuels live, and I hope you enjoy it, enjoy consuming it as much as I enjoyed creating it. And it will hopefully become a semi-regular thing, maybe once every 2 weeks, once every 4 weeks. We're going to try to do a regular cadence there, because Eric just brings such a different and fresh perspective that I think is really healthy for people to listen to, because I have my opinions. You guys listen to me every day. You know that I have my opinions, and you probably can recite them back to me at this point. But Eric has a lot of interesting things to say as well, that's for sure. So catch that one tomorrow. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.